So Anna, could you please tell us something about March to Aleppo, Civil March to Aleppo? Why did you decide, you and your friends or colleagues, why did you decide to organize it?
In 2016, when
Yeah.
there were so many Syrians living in Berlin, together with my husband and with my friends, we invited some Syrians to live with us. And suddenly, the war in Syria was not something far away, but was something touching me personally very much, because my flatmates, my new good friends, they were living in my flat and in the kitchen answering calls from Aleppo. So suddenly it was not just news in the TV, but something very, very close. And for 2 years, I was organizing a lot of different campaigns in Berlin for Syrians. But in some point, I felt that I still have to do more. I was doing the demonstrations, I was doing projects in the camps, but I all the time felt very helpless, and I felt that it doesn't help, and that there is thousands of us sitting in front of our computers and not knowing what to do. And there was this one day when I was in the refugee camp. That was a day of bombing Aleppo. I guess everybody remembers these pictures of the nurses taking babies from incubators in the cellar of the hospitals. And this was like very, very strong and symbolic for me. I have 2 kids, and they were pre-born and they were in incubators. So for me, the incubator is a symbol of life, not of destroying the world. And I felt that it can't be like this, that I can't take it anymore. And I thought that there must be more people feeling the same. And it started just with a small sentence written on Facebook to all my friends. It was rather a scream of helplessness than the idea of the project. I just wrote, what if we will all go there? If we all just stand up and go there? And I had this completely naive vision that all Europe just stand up, pack the backpacks, and we all go there. And what then? What will happen? Will they bomb us on the border or not? What will happen? It was just completely spontaneous, absurd sentence. And suddenly, in a few hours, this sentence changed into the real idea, because there was a lot of people all over the world writing to me saying, okay, if you really do it, I do it with you. If you go, I go. If you go, I go. And this was the first wave. The second wave was the reaction of Syrians calling me from Aleppo saying, like, are you really doing it? And that was a moment when it was too late. I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So after 3 weeks, we started walking. And we walked from Berlin to Syrian border for 8.5 months. We were walking from Berlin to Syrian border through Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia, Greece, and Lebanon. Altogether, we were almost 4,000 people. At the beginning, my husband and the kids, they went with me, but they had to go back to school, so then we were changing a bit, and sometimes I was going home for a few days. They were visiting. There was 5 people who went from Berlin to the Syrian border. There were people from 62 countries on the march.
And like many Slovaks use arguments against migration, just take them to your home. But you personally took some people to your home. How was it to have
refugees
at
home?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm very lucky that I have this experience to take refugees home, because I believe that all the people who are afraid, they wouldn't be afraid if they would take refugees home and get to know them. I think that fear comes from the lack of knowledge and experience, and if we all would have this experience and the opportunity to ask all our questions, why men fight, why men cross the sea, why they have mobile phones, why this or that. I had this opportunity in my kitchen to ask all these questions. It's not that I didn't have these questions, of course I had. But I could ask them, and I could hear the answers personally from a person, not from stupid videos online. When there were so many Syrians in Berlin, I felt that it can't be like this, that people sleep with their faces on the pavement 20 minutes from my flat, and I had 2 rooms free because our flatmates went on holidays. So we decided to invite few people home. At the beginning, I thought we will invite a family because I have kids, and I thought the family infrastructure, this makes sense. But for families, it was the easiest to find place to sleep. People are afraid of the single male, right? And I'm not afraid of single male, so I invited 3 of them to our flat. And they were living with us. One was living for 2 months, one for 3, and one for 2 years.
Do you know something about current situation in Syria?
Oh, I have updates every day because with all my contacts before the march and then during the march, people see that we have influence and that we have contact to media and we can spread the news. So there is no day when I'm not getting pictures or videos from Syria to spread, which is a bit difficult because we all know that on every war there is the information war and you never know what is real, what is not real. It's still during the march, I remember this one evening with my husband, I said like, I don't know anything anymore. And he said, yeah, you know a lot, you just don't know what is true, what is not. And this is something which we were trying to fight during the march because we were visiting places, we were visiting different camps, especially in Greece and then on Lesbos, on the islands and then in Lebanon. And we could see on our own what is the situation there. We could meet people personally. And now all these people, they are in contact with me, telling me what is the situation.
Mm-hmm. And what is the follow-up of this march? Will there be civil march to Aleppo the second or something?
Oh, for sure not.
Okay.
This was too difficult. Everything was too difficult. It was one huge conflict, this march. It's really interesting to think about it, that you have a group of many European people very much believing in human rights, in dialogue, in respect, and they still might have fights about anything. Okay, we were in very not natural situation. We were walking every day 30 kilometers. We were walking in -16 in Czech Republic to +40 in Lebanon. We were sleeping every evening for free in schools, churches, mosques, in one space with all these strangers. Yes, it's not normal situation, but I didn't expect that it can be so difficult to find solutions. So for sure, big lesson for all of us is that it's really easy to have conflicts and it's really not easy to find peace. And I think after this march, we also understand the situation of conflict in Syria much better, also from the conflict perspective, just purely. We had a lot of Syrians on the march from very different sides. We were trying to watch movies, connect on Skype with different groups of Syrians to discuss a lot, so we got to know the situation in Syria much better. But what is, I believe, the strongest outcome of the march is this: once we broke through the feeling of being helpless, almost everybody who took part in the march is now active, do things. It can be in the group with other people from the march, or in their local communities, or they came back to the places they visited during the march. They believe that it's possible to do something if you try. Yes, it doesn't mean we achieved a lot as the march, but we achieved something. We managed to walk from Berlin to Syrian border in a group of complete amateurs. And the people who came to the march, they've seen it, that even completely amateurs, without any money, they can sleep for 232 nights for free somewhere and reach in every city, I don't know, 500 people. So now, for example, in Poland, all the demonstrations for Syria are organized by people who took part in the march. The refugees we invited home, it was one Syrian guy, one Afghani guy, and one guy from Montenegro. Each of them had very different story. It was really very, very valuable to see it, to see all the beautiful moments with them and all the things we have in common, but also to experience all the challenges, because it's not that there are no challenges. Of course there are challenges, yes. The first few days when they were in my flat, I came back home and all the kitchen was completely cleaned up, the knives separated from the spoons. I came back home and I was like, what is going on here? And they said, like, Anna, you really have to clean up the kitchen because your husband will leave you if you don't do it. And it was so interesting because we could start discussing it, that well, no, he will not leave me because I don't clean up the kitchen. And you know, these little excuses in everyday life, they gave us a lot. And because we became friends, we felt very free to ask these questions. I was free to ask them questions, but they, having a new, very challenging life in new country, which was very different for them culturally and like traditionally, they could also ask me. Yes, they went to the German course and they could ask me, because we are friends, if it's okay if the girl want to go for coffee on the break during the German course, if it's okay or not. Most of people, they don't know it, but they also cannot ask it. So it was a beautiful exchange, and our Syrian friend who stayed for 2 years with us, he's the most beloved uncle for my kids. They speak a bit of Arabic even.
What was the biggest hoax related to migration which you have met with, like a journalist?
What do you mean by this question?
Like fake news. What kind of fake news about migration did you meet, and you considered it like, oh, this is unbelievable that people can believe to this?
Interesting question. I'm all the time shocked. First of all, I'm really shocked that people don't check things.
Okay.
This is something for me absolutely normal, and if I see news, it's the most normal thing for me to check it. If I see a picture with some subtitle, first thing I do is I put it into Google picture search to check if this picture was used already somewhere else, and maybe it's not from this week in Hungary, but maybe it's from 3 years ago in Iraq. Yes, this is my first thing, and this is also something I see that I'm teaching my family, and my mom starts to call me too, asking, do you think this is true or not? I think people should be very aware of it. During the time when the biggest group of refugees was crossing Europe, in Polish media, for example, the coverage was taken from Hungary, because through Poland there were no refugees crossing, so no Polish journalist could film refugees crossing Poland. And in Hungary, in the state news, it was allowed only to show men. They were not allowed to show women and kids. So all the coverage in Polish media coming from the south was covering only men. And this is a part I really want to discuss with people, because I believe that people have a right to be afraid of different things. And I believe that people have a right to ask questions. And people who've seen for last 3 years only this coverage, they believe in this coverage, yes, because they haven't been there. They didn't have this chance, like me in my flat, to talk with refugees. So they have a right, and we should answer calmly on this question. And then letting to know them that, for example, in Hungary it was only allowed to show men by default. This is a proper contra answer for it. I don't think there are bad or good questions about migration. I think every problem you can imagine is okay to check. In Germany, of course, there was also a lot of fake news. For example, in my bakery in Berlin, my baker, he told me, you know, here outside, just 20 minutes away from here, there is this biggest refugee camp. And you know what is happening there? The refugees, they go to the shop, they just put all the things to basket, and they pass by the doors and say that Merkel will pay for it. I was like, okay, interesting. And then, what I do in such a situation, I go to the supermarket, and I ask the cashier if it's true or not. And of course it's not true, yes? But I really believe in checking things.
Did you go back to your baker?
Of course, I recorded it. No, he said, no, of course you feel stupid if you are faced with the situation. People don't like to be faced with, people don't like when what they believe is not what is real. So then their brain will work to protect the thing they believe in.
Or when do you think that this narrative has changed from like people didn't know anything about like refugees or migrants and so on. And like for example, in Slovakia previously there was much more people who were coming here like migrants, and we were not like interested because it was not a problem. And suddenly in 2015 there was few people, and here was a problem. So when and how did this narrative change?
No, it's interesting to notice, because when I look into statistics and I look into numbers at the beginning of 90s, we had the same or even slightly bigger amount of refugees from outside of Europe coming to Europe. People don't know it, but I think a big difference is all this policy about passports and visas and entering countries, because it's much easier to picture huge crowd of people coming if you force them to come only in some way. Yes, at the beginning of 90s people were coming by planes to different places in Europe and nobody noticed them, and like this, whichever group you would put on the boats and dehumanize them, this is a beautiful topic for media. I remember that I see it on the example of Poland. I have 2 kids and they are half German. Still 3 years ago, when we were coming to Warsaw, it was normal that my kids speak also other language than Polish on the streets. 2 years ago I came with them on the main train station. They were singing song in German, a kid's song, 2 blonde little girls singing German song. And we were approached by a group of guys with a very aggressive attitude, saying that Germans should go to Germany. And that was 2 years ago, and I thought that it was a crazy exception, that we were very unlucky to meet them. And then a year ago it started that people speaking German are beaten up on Polish streets. And this is happening more and more often. And once the official narrative lets things like this happening and don't punish them, it will just go on.
Why do you think it is important for a person who is not in a conflict to be empathetic to those people who are suffering?
For me, I don't see much difference between a little Polish or Slovak girl living in the neighborhood and little Syrian girl living in Syria. I don't feel that one is more important than the other. When I hear about her house burning and falling on her, I don't know why I should help more somebody from Poland than somebody from Syria. But this is a natural human behavior, that we first of all want to help people who are biologically and culturally closer to us. I think it's just how we work. But I think it's terrible, because especially when I talk with Syrians who tell me that in 2010 they were in cinema and then everything started, and they would never think that the situation would be like it is now. And I see my sister going to cinema last week, and probably she also has no idea that maybe in 6 years her country will not exist. We can also just think with the pure egoistic attitude that, okay, if the war is here, it will be the same for us. Yes, will they behave in the same way or not? I believe that we all sit on some bench, and in Europe we sit on very big and comfortable benches. And for me personally, it's not a problem to sometimes move a little bit if somebody else wants to sit next to me. And there are people telling me that, okay, but then you move on this bench and you move farther, and what if you fall down from your bench because you move too much to give some other people space? And I'm not able to think like this. I believe that even if I will fall down from my bench, maybe there is some much better bench, or maybe somebody else will let me sit on the bench. If there is somebody in need, we just have to help him.